Hello, everyone. This is Eric Cohan, HCL Technologies Chief Procurement Officer. It gives me immense pleasure to host this roundtable discussion with our Stevie Award winners for 2021. We have some distinguished guests with us. In terms of format, what I'll be doing is I'll probably ask quickly each of our participants just to give a quick introduction. You see what companies they represent, but just to give a little bit of what their role is at their company, and then I will begin by asking some questions, and hopefully we'll have some interesting and lively dialogue. So, Farzana, I'll ask you to go first.
Thank you, Eric. I'm Farzana Ashraf. I work for a company called Pearson, and my role at Pearson is I am the Chief Product and Technology Officer, and I've been with Pearson for 15 years.
Great, thank you. Dean, you had a friend behind you wave, but we'll ask you to introduce yourself.
Yes, so Dean Dawes, I am the Global CIO here at Brightstar. I joined Brightstar in 2016, so it's been a long and rewarding time that I've spent here so far.
Great, thank you. Karthik, please.
Hello, everyone. Karthik Venkatesh. I am Chief Information Officer for Walden University. I have been with the organization 11 years. Looking forward to the position.
Great, thank you. So we have an interesting panel here. All of them are in the technology space, but they've got some interesting roles in actually being part of the product that their company sells, which is very exciting. So we'll touch on that as we go. So typically all these conversations always kick off about what 2020 meant to their business. So that would be my first question. Really, the phrase "the new normal," we'll call it whatever we'd like. What I'd like to understand from each of you is, what was one thing that really changed last year that you feel in your business will perpetuate and really change the whole mindset of your stakeholders, of your customers, and it really wasn't just a one-time blip, but a really change in the way you'll be doing business. So we'll go in reverse order. Karthik, why don't you tell us what you feel?
Sure. So from Walden University's perspective, we just education as a general in perspective. 2020 was is a pivotal year. Many due to COVID, many institutions had to rapidly shift how they operate. But from a Walden perspective, we've been doing online and distance learning for 50 years. Last year was our 50th anniversary. So for us, online was not a rapid pivot. But where we really had to shift was how we support the organization, where our workforce is completely decentralized. How do we make that pivot? But also, how do we continue to push the boundaries of what Walden as a university is doing in the online space? And I think from a business perspective, I think those were two key things that we were really focused on. And continue to drive some of the transformation that Walden University is doing for its students.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the higher ed, and even not even higher ed, even in high school and all the way down, this has really demonstrated that remote learning can work, but probably also putting a camera in front of the professor or the teacher isn't necessarily the right method, right? And I'm sure there's been a lot of different testing you've had to do, technology issues. You've got professors now or teachers have to become technology experts sometimes as well, and some of them might be a little bit of behind the times as it relates to that, right? So that's interesting challenges, I'm sure.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Eric, I think it's also about how education is delivered. So we've been very focused on driving new ways of consuming education for our students and for our customers. So there's obviously that constant focus on that as well.
Fabulous. So Dean, I'll ask you also I think Brightstar perhaps isn't a consumer name, so maybe a little bit about what you do. I know what you guys do, but some of our audience may not. And I think how just your business might have changed with the uptick in people leveraging technology, companies increasing the use of their remote technologies, and how that has affected your business.
Yeah, sure. So Eric, what I would say in terms of Brightstar, in terms of our service offerings, etc., we're the company that stands behind many of the mobile device operators and other organizations particularly around everything to do with your mobile device. So we provide an end-to-end service associated with this. So in terms of your phone, it's actually, if you're with, say, an organization such as Sprint or O2, Telefonica in the UK, because we're a global organization through LATAM, EMEA, US, as well as through APAC as well. What we do is we provide all the services associated with it. So we'll get the phone to you on behalf of that MDO. We'll actually provide all the insurance, okay, associated with it. When you're ready to trade in that phone, we will actually buy it back and resell it, refurbish it and resell it through our services. And additionally, we offer also the value-added components as well, including the repair services associated with it, offered through the mobile device operators, as well as accessories components as well. But our business focus and drive is really around particularly the device protection side of our business. I mean, that is really where our focus and direction is, as well as the buyback traded side. Those are the two main legs of the stool that Brightstar service operates. So even though folks wouldn't have heard of Brightstar, we touch so many people, you know, through the interactions with their provider. Yeah.
So as it relates then to in 2020, I imagine was an increase of deployment of mobile devices, of having to secure those, a lot less opportunity for people to physically bring their devices somewhere when there was having to be repaired. So how'd that stress your environment?
That was really interesting. I mean, on two fronts. I don't think CIOs have had to deal with or contemplate anything like we've dealt with in the last 16, 18 months. So what we saw in two areas was one, you know, which Karthik touched on. I mean, there was a move, particularly for us. We already had an online service presence standing behind Apple and other organizations anyway. But what we saw, because a lot of those Apple, Sprint, etc. stores closed, we saw a huge uptick in the online side of the business. So, you know, we had to make sure that not only were our people ready, but our systems were ready to support that, you know, 2, 3, 4 times increase in volume coming through those channels. So that was a real, you know, push from the IT side to make sure that we were ready to do that. And then secondly, I think the other area that really we had to focus on was, you know, moving away from a global office-based, warehouse-based organization and then dealing with what we needed to do remotely. So because we've got warehouses, we still kept the minimum crew to make sure warehouse operations continued, but we had to deploy all the back office functions on a remote basis. So we had to make sure that we were ready to go for all of that. So those are the struggles that we went through in 2020 into 2021.
I mean, hearing a common theme here. It's both supporting your internal business stakeholders, but also supporting your customers, you know, with the online, you know, presence and being taxed as well. Similar with Karthik. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, we had major global deployments going on as well at the same time. So obviously we had to continue those and support those, but in a way that we weren't used to in terms of remote working.
Right. Great. So Farzana, Pearson is a testing company. So tell us a little bit more about Pearson. And I have to imagine having a high schooler who had to just take an AP exam remote. Maybe, you know, you guys probably had a lot of different challenges to work with, and you also support the product, as I understand, not just internal IT. So help share with us how 2020 perhaps affected Pearson trajectory, you know, longer term.
Definitely. So Pearson is a global learning company, and Pearson VUE is the service provider for assessment, certification, and credentials. So for example, if you are a software engineer, want to be Microsoft certified engineer, you would come to Pearson VUE, go to one of our test centers, take the certification, get the certification, and then that helps with your, whether it's something that you need for your career, something that your employer is asking for, or you want to move up your career. So any way you want to use your certification, you can do that. And our market segment is quite diverse, so it's not just in IT certification. If you're a professional, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you need to renew your license. If you're part of a state legislation and you need to upgrade your license, or you want to take a driver's test in UK, you're 16 years old, you show up in a test center and you take the test, and we provide the service to make sure that you are who you are. And we work with our test sponsors, in this case, whether it's the government or the Microsoft of the world or the GMAC of the world. We work with businesses and test sponsors to make sure that whatever the objective they have for their certification program, we provide the end-to-end service, and candidates come to our test center, take the test, validate, and get the certification and move on with their career. So that's really what the business is about. So 2020 was very disruptive for us, because as you can imagine, that people could not show up in test center to take high-stake exams. So we had to very quickly figure out our online offering, so how people could take these tests from home or some other location. High-stake exams, because it's people's life depends on these certifications. For example, if you're a doctor or a nurse, people's life depends on it. It's not a test that you're taking to go cut hair, right? So we have to make sure that the high-stake exams, the technology exists to make sure that we can support the high-stake security and all the integrity of the test that people were able to take from home, because people's lives could not stop just because of the pandemic. We had a shortage in the US and all around the globe for first responders, for example. So there was a huge, massive demand for getting certification done for those people so that they can go out in the field and provide that service. So we had to very quickly figure out how to provide those high-stake exams through our online virtual test center setup, as secured as our test centers. And that changed quite a bit how businesses, the test sponsors, in our case, our customers, how they worked and how we worked, right? So it's almost a 180-degree pivot in terms of the whole operations, in terms of making sure the candidates are ready, because there's a lot of preparation they have to do before they sit down in an environment outside of a test center to make sure that the environment is ready, their machines are ready, they are ready. So we had to come up with the whole new process within weeks to make sure that our business and our test sponsors' business don't get disrupted. So that's really from a business perspective, but internally, I think the culture and people and how people work, that changed quite a bit. And I think that's going to kind of stay, that whole culture has shifted from really focusing on being productive, and the word is flexible, right? The culture of showing up in the office every day, being in an agile, collaborative environment versus work remotely. We had to figure that out again when the pandemic started, because we were very much physically co-located culture to, okay, now go remote and still have those collaborative way of designing, thinking, doing work. And now that post-pandemic, I think we have to figure this out, that how do we all now go back to pre-pandemic, or is it a hybrid model? So there's lots, I think, on our way to figure that out. But one thing that we have figured out, that once you have a clear direction where we want to go, remote or not, people figure out how to stay productive and how to kind of stay on the objective. So that was a good test for all of us, being a global organization, how to kind of change the whole culture, way of doing work, and then go away for almost a year and a half, and then kind of now figure out how to come back and figure out what's the new way of doing that.
Yeah, for someone who's been working remote for over 10 years, to me, it really wasn't a big change other than I'm not getting on an airplane anymore. And everybody likes to do video calls where before they were perfectly fine having me to dial in. So changes for sure. So I'm going to move to a little bit of a softer kind of question. So this has to do with how do you stay positive? How do you get your teams, more importantly, to stay positive with all the issues of maybe their own personal situation, family member situations, concerned about their job, concerned about just their environment and the stressors that kind of happen here in the United States in the last year, for instance. So I'm interested, Karthik, how did you tackle that while you're doing your job and maintaining the kind of the positivity that you needed from your team?
Sure, Eric. So I think on my side, I think the focus was, I think, twofold. One, we had a very strong transformation goal that the organization had put forth, and everybody pivoted to it and said, hey, we have to do this, and we have to work together. And so how do we best do it together? So there was a very conscious focus on people, conscious focus on flexibility, conscious focus on ability to do things. And as you mentioned, different people had different things they were working with. And so how could we be flexible, but also, as Farzana mentioned, be productive? And everybody had a different style, and we just had to work together to focus on bringing these things together. Mm-hmm. I think the other aspect of this is, the mental health side, focusing on that and ensuring that the teams have and the leaders have the tools they need to continue to support our goal and our mission, and helping them drive to that, helping them and giving them the support for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'd say one of the positives, if I, of the last year was just bringing mental health to the front of the conversation. And one of the roles I have at HCL is I'm quite involved in our benefits program, and just having that elevate. Most companies have always had an EAP program or something similar, right? But now actually putting in programs and to address that, because I think that's, some of our colleagues live in situations where it's very hard for them to work, right? They may live with, maybe they don't have an office space. They're in those of us who have people in India, they're just kind of cramped in there. So there's just a lot of stressors that kind of get to people.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think one of the things, for example, Eric, was we allowing some people to actually come to work because right. from their personal situation, they just couldn't be productive at home.
Yeah.
So trying to kind of to bring to your point, and those are the types of flexibility that we really had to focus on, be very conscious about, so that we can keep us moving forward. Mm-hmm. And obviously for the teams to feel supported so they could continue to be productive. And
that's good. That's good. So Dean, anything you would add around the kind of staying positive during all of this? How have you done that? What have you learned?
Yeah, I think the main thing is to make sure, what we did is we adopted a over communication program. So we made sure that we were communicating with employees, because they obviously have during the period a whole series of concerns, safety concerns. When do I go back to the office? How am I going to go back to the office? Those kind of things were particularly important. So what we wanted to make sure is, as an organization, and remember we're a global IT organization with around just under 420 employees worldwide at the moment, okay, that we communicated with them and we made sure that people understood what the working criteria was, how we were going to execute during that period of time, and make sure that we delivered on what we actually set out in 2020. So communication was particularly important to us, and clearly one of those aspects is making sure that we're working with our partners, particularly within our HR teams as well. So to address the questions that people had. And additionally, in certain areas, we have a large center in Chennai. We have over 250 people there. And particularly we were very focused on their needs as well, arranging vaccinations and those kind of things, and making sure that they had access to medical care and looking after them as part of the overall Brightstar family. So, and we take, our employee health very seriously, and we made sure that we looked after our people, and we're very clear about what the expectation was, what we were doing, what was available for them as we progressed through the COVID period.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I learned was to the level of dependency Indian citizens have on the corporates, and they can't necessarily rely on the medical systems and the government to fill that gap like we can in some more of the Western countries. Yeah. So, Farzana, anything you'd like to add around positivity, please?
Yeah, I think very similar to what Dean and Karthik said, right? It's our really approach was to stay clear on the objective and be flexible on the approach. It was very, very important that we all knew that we all had a very, very important job. We knew that we had to figure out how to solve the first responders problem, how to help the nurses, how to help the doctors. So we knew that we had to absolutely stay on the task and be clear of it. But we had to figure out a new way of doing things and doing it faster and doing it, making sure faster doesn't mean that we go short on quality. So we had a great challenge at hand, but we made sure that we are very creative and flexible in terms of how we go about doing that. Mm-hmm. Communication was key. Pearson is a 25,000 people company, and we are in every continent. So making sure all of our people are with us on the objectives, and we put a lot of emphasis on making sure that mental health is a great example, because every country brings different challenges during COVID, whether it's India or Australia or UK or US, it's different kind of challenges. And we had to make sure that staying in compliance with the local government policies and our employees' health and safety and communication in terms of how is an organization doing on a regular basis, so that they are assured, our people are assured that from a work perspective, that is not really a priority, but it's health and safety and how to cope with all of that is priority. Because end of the day, for any organization, if there's people are not healthy and safe and able to put their best effort out there, it doesn't work. So there was a lot of effort from our organization, from leadership team and ground up from our people to help each other, have a buddy system, work with the managers to make sure they're in constant communication, because being remote, again, was another challenge to make sure that all of that is happening, no matter where those people were.
Something you said reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Where if you don't have the basics of food, shelter, and something else, nothing else is going to happen. I can't remember what it is. So I'm going to move away from COVID, because I'm sure we're all talked out about that. So one of the things that a lot of our junior people look to is mentorship. So I know some of you, probably all of you, have had mentors, are mentors to others. Excuse me, have had mentees. You are mentors to others, and I know. Farzana, you actually are involved in, I think, Women's in Technology as well, which is, in a sense, that's exactly what it is. So maybe I'm going to go right back to you before you have a chance to rest, and tell us a little bit about how mentorship has helped you, both receiving and giving, and where you see that benefiting.
Mentorship for me has been very, very important in my career. I actually have been very fortunate to have one mentor for the last 15 years, as long as I've been with Pearson. The biggest benefit I have had is having a mentor who I could speak to easily about, and the mentor happened to be part of this business. So when I joined, I definitely did not know a lot about our business. So to have a mentor who I could go and then just bounce ideas off of, and then just ask questions. Why are we doing it this way? Why aren't we doing that? what happens if something does not happen, right? So to being able to have those open-ended discussions and being able to bounce ideas off of always have been very, very beneficial to me, because that kind of validated my thought process, and I had always somebody in a safe environment that I could go and say, I have this idea. How do I take this idea and go through the ideation and validate my idea and do a little bit of experiment? I think without the support of my mentor and validating and bouncing that ideas off of, it would be a different journey for me for my career.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit that I saw. And because of that great relationship I have had, women in technology is something that I'm just naturally gravitate towards, because when I went to school, I was literally either one or two of 50 students in a programming class. And that was always, different. And when I started my career, it's always one or two out of 20 or 30 people in a room are women. And in a technology field, in a business field, it always felt like it was that there was the gender gap. So working with young women, whether starting from high school, so I work with 6 high schools in Twin Cities, where I go and talk to girls about what does a career in technology means for women. And when they go to college, we have started this internship program within our organization every year, and we hire as many as we can out of this internship program. And then also in Twin Cities, I'm involved with different organizations, working with women and trying to be their mentor, because there is still quite a bit of gender gap in the technology area. So I feel like I learn a lot from them when they come and talk about their challenges. I feel like the challenges I felt I had 10 years ago, it's different these days. So it's good to kind of stay up to speed with how the corporate world is changing, what kind of gaps and challenges women see as they enter the technology as in their career. And just, again, being able to have those conversations in a safe environment, I think is important for me and people that I work with.
Let me ask a follow-on this, the idea of trust in a safe environment. I mean, you currently support every business function in your company, right? They're all,
and
right? How do you personally feel comfortable that you may not expose a weakness, right? I mean, you get to a certain level when you run a department, you're the top IT person or technologist in your company, and sometimes you have no one to talk to, right? Without them necessarily knowing something you don't know, right? So I'm curious, how did you bridge that? And I know you said 15 years ago, so you're more junior, but I mean, even today, I mean, I'm interested in that.
Definitely. I have my personal opinion. I personally think that end of the day, I'm a human. I absolutely have weaknesses, so I tend not to hide it. If I have weaknesses and I work with people, I feel there's nothing wrong having weaknesses, but I tend to stay focused on my strength so that I can leverage my relationship. I personally, I feel like I'm a relationship kind of a person, so as I build relationship and trust, it makes it easier. And I feel like anytime, if anybody tries to hide their weaknesses, then you're not being genuine. And I yet to come across somebody that is perfect and doesn't have any weaknesses. So if anybody says that they don't, it's kind of hard to process that. So I think my personal opinion is that I am who I am. And I believe I have a lot of things to offer to the business and to people I work with. And it's a package deal.
Great. Thank you for that. So Dean, I'll go to you. When I was looking over your profile, I saw that you've had a mix of corporate jobs and consulting roles, not too dissimilar to what I experienced. And I'm interested in maybe there's some stuff you've learned in the consulting world, where it's more of a matrix organization, project-based, and 6 months, a year later, you switch around who you work with. but maybe you still maintain the mentorship relationships. Anything you learned there that you've now taken to your more traditional, I'll call it, corporate IT role?
Yeah, so in regards to mentorship, and really it comes down to continuous learning programs. Okay, so I mean we're all technologists. We are heavily dependent on new products, new applications, whether it's an infrastructure, the cloud services components, whether it's AWS, Microsoft, etc. We're always learning all the time. So I think from a consulting point of view, coming into this, that continuous learning process continues. And it's very important, not just from a CIO perspective, but also for the staff that are underneath, to be looking at new technologies and seeing what's applicable to our organization, and then determining which ones we should be looking at in terms of a proof of concept or business case opportunities, and then running through those to progress into a real implementation moving forward. But it's extremely important that we make sure that our people have opportunities to continue their training. I mean, anyone in the IT wants to be in an organization that's continually growing, that's continually improving their skill sets. So what we want to make sure of is that our people have the opportunity to learn and to utilize those new technologies, particularly in areas, if you're in application development, like so many of our folk are, then we're embracing and moving forward with a lot of these serverless technologies at the moment from AWS or Microsoft. So those are the types of things that we always want our people to be cognizant of. The other thing I would add is, one thing I would say from a consulting perspective that we always found is, and I don't know if the other folk on the call have found the same thing, but from a consulting perspective, it's not often the consultant has the magical answer. All we're doing is we're working with Farzana or Karthik to sit with them to pull the information, and they have the answers most of the time. Okay, we sit there, we document it, we're very good at PowerPoints, those types of things. Okay, but our real skill set is to make sure we pull that information. So what we've done is made sure that we provide programs, ideation sessions, which Farzana talked about before, but we've formalized that with gamification of that, if you like, and actually incentives which reward people for the ideas that they bring to the table. So those are very important things, I think, taking from a consulting perspective, to develop and nurture that within your IT teams and your business teams, and to include that in your strategy moving forward.
Yeah, one of the things, I was a IT consultant for a long time, and what I enjoyed most about that was that every 6 months it was like a new college semester, right? You get to go to a new project and move on and on. So I can actually tie everything together here.
Yeah.
So Karthik, you're involved with Code in the Schools.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about what value you feel you're bringing there, and maybe what you're taking away.
Sure. So I think I'll start with the mentorship side, Eric. Obviously for me, mentorship has been a very critical part of growth. And for me, the mentorship side has come from my mentors pushing me to think bigger and challenging my ideas. And of course, it was a safe place where I could share ideas. But for me, where I saw the value was more around the fact that I was pushed harder to say, you need to think bigger, you need to go bolder. And I think that's kind of helped me shape the way I am right now. And I try to do that with similarly in terms of helping whoever I am mentoring to kind of do the same. Think bigger, but execute in an iterative way, so you can actually get to the value really quickly. With respect to Code in Schools, it's something I have always wanted to give back. Obviously, I've come from a background of coding and STEM and going through college and things of the nature. And now I was at a point where I wanted to give back to the community. The Code in School is an organization that focuses on helping middle school and high school students learn computer coding, essentially, with a focus on them being ready for a job at the end of their session with them. So And obviously it's a Baltimore-based organization, and a lot of the students coming in have probably never coded before or don't have the resources for it. So where I am helping that coding schools essentially is helping them. Obviously, with COVID coming in, it was a very in-person offering that was in place, and the organization has had to pivot because of COVID. And I joined the board just recently in March, and basically helping them strategize on how we can scale, how can we go online with my experience with online, and helping also drive to continue to for the mission of that organization as well.
So are these participants working their way into a job, or is usually they're going on to university?
They're mostly, it's both. Many students are going on to the university from here, but with the added benefit of learning Python and learning AI and learning JavaScript and things of that nature. And some are actually ended up getting jobs after high school immediately. Yeah. And so it's been a mix of both, but it is giving these students the foundation for them to make a choice. And I think that is where the organization is focused on.
Very good, thank you. So Dean, I'm going to put you on the spot now. I'll give the others some time to think about it. So we've all had some failures in our careers. Some we'd like to forget about. Hopefully, though, we walk away from them with some learnings. What's one you'd like to share with us that at any time in your career where there was some failure? Maybe it was something you caused, maybe it was cause you didn't do something or whatever. And what did you learn from that? And what kind of pearl of wisdom would you leave with those listening?
I think I was going to say I haven't had any, but I don't think anyone would really.
And you have no weaknesses, like
exactly. And I have a full set of hair, so yes. But what I probably would say is one probably more recently, particularly it came up in a discussion again because we're here with our CEO doing meetings as well, is particularly when we're doing programs or releases, we need to make sure that as we deploy that we're taking into account all of the inputs and making a wise decision whether we're ready to go or not. And often that in some cases we need to work with our customers for them to clearly understand the risk associated with some of the timelines that we work jointly. So where we're asked to, in a recent case, to push up our timeline, we need to make sure that we look at that, we assess the risks more closely, and that we sit down and have a discussion much more clearly with our customers in terms of what that may entail, because we end up in a situation, or in this case, we ended up in a situation where the deployment wasn't as smooth as what it needed to be, largely driven by schedule, etc. But I think the ability to make sure that we are clear with our customer, we assess the risk properly, and we really, there's not a problem saying no to the customer sometimes where the risk outweighs the result. So that's probably the key learning that we probably had from the most recent example.
Yeah, that's a good one. That applies just about every kind of program and thing one does too, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always a focus that the customer's always right, which Brightstar they are, just for all the customers that are out there. But we need to work with them to make sure that they clearly articulate the risk of anything that we are doing, because remember, from a Brightstar is very coupled with our customers. Our systems are very coupled with our customers. We don't stand alone in terms of our IT side. We've got to work jointly, because that transaction coming in is actually coming in from the mobile device operators, the Apples, those kind of companies. So our integration is probably higher than most organizations that you would come across back to our customer base.
And you have a limited customer base, really. I mean, it's not like you can go hit hundreds of millions of quote customers, right? I mean, there's There's only so many carriers, right? And so it's, you got to keep them all happy.
Yes, multiple customers, multiple platforms in multiple geographies. That's what we're dealing with, and multiple service environments as well. Because remember, we have multiple channels, whether it's the accessories, the logistics, the device and warranty. Multiple systems come into play.
Very good, thank you. So Farzana, since you've already told us all you are not perfect, I'm sure you have at least one thing that didn't go successful that you learned from.
Eric, I think like any of us on this call, it's not just one failure. I think when I hear you ask me that question, if I reflect back in last, let's say 5 years, the partner that you pick for a very important delivery, the person that you hire for a leadership role, the product design that you approve, the market that you go after. It's like there's so many important business decisions we have to make on an everyday basis. I've made my share of mistakes, and I think instead of just focusing on one, what I'd like to say is that every time I do that, I have gotten so much better at taking the time and reflect and say, okay, next time, how could I have seen that or thought about it differently, instead of just jumping into a conclusion or jumping into this partnership or jumping into this. What could I have done different? 10 years ago, I was not good at it, but I've realized that I had to work on it. So I worked really hard, and I feel like I have made progress. And the key thing that I always talk to my team is that, okay, let's play this out. So we are getting into this partnership with a very key technology provider, and our delivery depends on their success as well. What else should we think about? What else should we know about them? How else should we think about 9 months down the road we have failed? What would we have, like hindsight 2020, right? It's much easier once you have failed to say, oh, should have, could have. How, let's just pretend that we have failed. What are the could have, should have we should think about and work on it? So that's what I really focus on these days more than anything else.
That's great. I had a boss when I was at Dell, when I was in IT, and we had a pre-postmortem, basically, right? So just what you're saying, let's talk about things that can go wrong and what we're going to do about them. And those were so painful. Like, who wants to do that, right? I want to talk about success, but very, very instructive, right? And constructive, because you identify things that, hey, we can do right now to make sure that if something bad happens, we haven't turned off our production environment, or we have a good backup, or this or that or whatever. So that's a good lesson. Karthik, how about you?
So on my side, I think similar to Farzana, right? I think I've had so many over the years. There's been big failures, small failures, and I think if you really want to focus on one, I think it's probably going to be about a large project which is running over. And we've had challenges with delivery and things of nature, right? So, but I think one thing that is beneficial for us is with us being us having the ability to pivot every 10 weeks. So we've had the opportunity to kind of make incremental changes, which has minimized how much impact of a failure can have. So I think that has been something that I'm very consciously focused on with the team. Is yes, we can fail, but let's pivot quickly so we can get back to incremental successes. And look, over the years we've had many. So, and I think that I would say two things for me. Like one, pivoting fast from failure, learning from it, and pivoting fast from failure. And I think the second part to this is owning it. And owning it with the executive leadership, saying, yes, we failed, and this is why we failed, and this is what we are doing to course correct. And I think that to me has gone a long way in terms of building trust, because my peers and my leadership trusts that when a failure is happening, they will know about it.
Mhm.
and they know that there will be a plan that we will come back to them with. So I think those two things have been very critical in terms of how the technology organizations navigated both failures and successes.
Something you said about 12-week. I imagine that means that's a semester or whatever, right? And you have a new batch coming in, kind of thing. Is that what you're
No, I
talking?
think we follow a scaled agile framework model. So we basically plan every 10 weeks and we deliver every 10 weeks. And we replan every. So it's now we have shifted to 12 weeks, so it aligns with our quarters. But essentially, the team we technically try to have every quarter plans, and we have that way we have the ability to pivot at the end of it if we need to.
Got it. I remember one of the lessons I heard from a CIO was bad news doesn't get better over time. So
Right.
A little bit of what you're talking about. That's always been most painful for me is like, when are you going to own up to it? When are you going to say, you know what, this train is just not going to make it? Dean, you were talking about risks and things like that. And that's always in a sense, a management failure, right? To say, hey, we're just not going to make it.
Right.
And I'm ready to throw up the white flag now versus pray for 3 miracles to happen and maybe it pulls off. So that's always hard as a leader. Thank you for that, guys. It's always hard to expose ourselves to failures. So let's finish up with a question here on when you think back on your career and the paths you've taken, what would be one change you would tell your young self, I should have done this, I should have done that? Karthik, I'm going to go back to you on that one.
Sure. So for me, I think I would say I've been very fortunate, right? My career path from where I was to where I am has been both a combination of mentorship, luck, and obviously focus on what I want to. The one thing I would say I would change for myself is actually be more conscious of where I want to be. As I said, I'm fortunate and lucky to be where I am, but I got here through a combination of luck and opportunity, right? But what I always say to tell myself now is I have to plan for where I want to go and look for opportunities for me to be able to get there. And that's one thing I would tell myself 10 years ago, saying, hey, be very thoughtful and be very conscious and seek out people and seek out leaders who can help you build the right attitude, build the right collaboration style, build the right communication, and obviously the technology comes behind it, and that will take you where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, very few of us were like Tiger Woods swinging a golf club at 5 years old and then grew up to be a golfer, right? I mean, a lot of us just kind of luck into where we are and circumstances, and just sort of our careers take us where they take us. So, Dean, what about you?
It's interesting you say luck into it. I mean, going back, my area that I started was actually an audit, tax, and liquidation in the chartered accounting environment back in New Zealand. So I think the best career decision I made was to get away from that and move into IT in the 80s. Okay, but I think to answer your question, the area that I probably would look back and go, what would I do differently is probably the most rewarding thing I've done is to switch from consulting to the coalface at the corporate side. So crossing that bridge is something I wouldn't have swapped the consulting side and the experience that I gathered there, but I probably would have told the 40-year-old me, shall we say, to think about making that change earlier on. Okay, but I will say that no regrets on the consulting side at all. I mean, the opportunity to work with a multitude of customers, get the experience from working with the Verizons, the AT&Ts, VBCs, those kind of Fortune 500 organizations, you can't do without. But I think definitely making that change is something that I've particularly enjoyed, and I think I would have told myself to think about that earlier on.
That's a good one. Farzana, how about you?
Eric, I want you to come back and ask me this question 10 years from now, because right now I don't have answer that has, a sizzle to it. So the fact is that I've been with Pearson for 15 years. I practically have grown up with this organization, and being part of a rapidly growing organization creates a lot of opportunities. And here I am. When I joined, I was one of the very small number of technology folks. Now I am the leader of the technology organization and the product organization. So, the organization has treated me very, very well and given me opportunities, and I have gone after opportunities. So what could I have done differently? I don't have a good answer, as I said, but I liked what Karthik said, that now is it the time to deliberately look out and plan versus, just go with the flow, and then opportunity comes and you grab and you grow. So that's something that, Karthik, I'm going to think about and see what is it that I want to do 5 years from now? What is it that I want to do 10 years from now? And kind of spend some time. So I liked that.
Yeah, well, that's, yes, Farzana, you've had a quite impressive career, so you should be proud of yourself. That's been quite a growth story there. I would say that for me, what I would tell myself is to chill out a little bit. I was so eager to graduate college, get a job, and never stop. And, I always felt like, hey, if I took a year off, how would that look for me? Now, I think kids these days don't necessarily look at it as much, but, that's as my son's in that stage of his life. And I was like, it's all right. Just, you'll figure it out. It's okay. And for me, I just couldn't even imagine not doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Graduate in 4 years, get a job, get on with your life, right? And that would be my advice. Is just chill out, take a step back. So, well, great. Well, this has really been fascinating and a really interesting conversation. Although I wasn't, I'm not billed as an IT guy. I actually have been an IT guy most of my life. So it's great to interact with IT leaders, and especially exciting to see how IT has moved from the back office to really some great award recipients. So thank you for being part of this, being customers of HCL, and congratulations on your award. So thank you for this, and I think we'll just end it here. Have a good day and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Eric. Right.